A man meets a stunning woman at a bar. They hit it off. Great conversation, undeniable chemistry. And before long, they're heading back to her place. As she gives him a quick tour of her apartment, something catches his eye. Her bedroom is covered in teddy bears. Tiny bears lined up neatly along the floor, medium-sized ones sitting proudly on a shelf above. And on the top shelf, massive, oversized teddy bears staring down like bouncers at a toy convention. He's a little thrown. This woman is sexy, sophisticated, and clearly obsessed with stuffed animals. But he shrugs it off. No way he's ruining the mood. She turns to him, gives him that look, and in seconds clothes are flying. The night is passionate, intense, and unforgettable. Afterwards, as they lie there catching their breath, he grins and asks, "So, how was it for you?" She stretches, yawns, and says casually, "Help yourself to any prize from the bottom shelf." The FBI was hiring an assassin. After months of background checks, interviews, and psychological tests, they narrowed the candidates down to three, two men and one woman. For the final test, the agents brought the first man to a steel door and handed him a loaded gun. "We need to know you'll follow orders no matter what," the agent said. "Inside this room is your wife. You are to kill her." The man looked horrified. I can't do that." "Then you're not the right fit," the agent said. "Take your wife and go." The second man was given the same instructions. He took the gun, stepped into the room, and closed the door. Silence. After a minute, he came out, eyes wet. "I couldn't pull the trigger. I love her too much." "Understood," said the agent. "You're not the one." Finally, the woman was brought to the door and handed the gun. "Your husband is inside. Do what needs to be done." She nodded, walked in, and closed the door. Immediately, bang, 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 then shouting, crashing, screams, thuds, furniture breaking, total chaos. After several minutes, the door creaked open. She stepped out panting, covered in sweat. "The damn gun was loaded with blanks," she said. "I had to finish the job with a chair." After 20 years of marriage, Dave's wife decides to surprise him by taking him to a strip club for his birthday. She figures, why not spice things up a bit? She'll be there. It'll be harmless fun. As they walk in, the doorman grins and says, "Hey, Dave, long time no see." His wife raises an eyebrow. "You've been here before?" Dave chuckles nervously. No, he's on my bowling team." They take a seat. A waitress walks over and asks, "Usual red wine, Dave." His wife glares. "How does she know what you drink?" Dave shrugs. "She's in the ladies' league. We share lanes." Just then, a stripper struts over, wraps her arms around him, and coos, "Hey, Davy, want your usual table dance, baby?" That's the last straw. His wife grabs her purse, storms out, and hops into the first cab she sees. Dave chases her down, leaps in beside her just before the door slams shut. She's fuming, shouting at him, furious. "I swear," Dave pleads, "she must have thought I was someone else." The cab driver glances in the rearview mirror and says, "Damn, Dave, you sure know how to pick 'em." An Englishman, an American, and a Japanese man are whitewater rafting when suddenly the river takes a deadly turn, straight toward a massive waterfall they didn't know was there. As they're moments away from plunging to their doom, a genie bursts out of the water in a flash of light. "I am the spirit of the waterfall," the genie says. "I cannot save you, but I can grant each of you one final wish before you go over." The American is up first. "I love my country, and before I die, I want to sing the national anthem, the full version. Give my friends lyric sheets, a live orchestra, and a gospel choir. I want it to be beautiful." The genie nods. "It will be done." The Japanese man steps forward. "I too love my country. Let me enjoy one last taste of home. Fermented soybeans, sea urchin, raw horse meat, pickled seaweed, sugared omelets. And enough to share with my friends." The genie bows. "It will be done." Then the Englishman leans in, lowers his voice, and whispers in the genie's ear, "Be a good chap and just shove me over the bloody edge before the singing starts and the raw horse shows up." A man is walking along a California beach when he stumbles on an old, weathered lamp. He picks it up, gives it a rub, and sure enough, a genie bursts out in a puff of smoke. The genie stretches, yawns, and says, all right, you've released me. Yada yada. Listen, I'm getting tired. 4th time this month. So let's skip the usual routine. You get one wish. Make it count." The man thinks for a moment, then says, I've always wanted to visit Hawaii, but I'm terrified of flying, and I get seasick. Could you build a bridge from California to Hawaii so I can just drive there? The genie stares at him. Are you serious? Do you know how deep the Pacific is? Think of the pillars, the concrete, the rebar, and the environmental permits. That's insane. Choose something else, something realistic. The man nods thoughtfully. After a long pause, he says, Okay, I've been married 4 times and all my ex-wives said I'm insensitive. I want to understand women. I want to know what they're thinking, why they cry for no reason, what they mean when they say nothing. How to make them truly happy. The genie blinks. Do you want that bridge 2 lanes or 4? A poor old woman was days away from eviction, forced to sell whatever she could to survive. As she rummaged through her dusty attic, she found an old, dull copper kettle. Maybe it's worth something, she muttered, wiping off the grime. Suddenly, poof! A genie burst from the spout in a swirl of smoke. I have seen your struggles, the genie boomed, and I shall grant you 3 wishes. The woman gasped, then smiled. Well, age hasn't been kind. I wish to be young and beautiful again. Bam! A flash of light, and where the wrinkled old woman once stood was a stunning young lady, radiant and graceful. Thrilled, she said, For my second wish, I want to be rich. I want a life of luxury. Bam! Her crumbling cottage vanished, replaced by a grand marble mansion. Chandeliers sparkled above. Her tattered clothes had turned into a flowing silk gown and glittering heels. As she admired her transformation, the genie spoke, You have 1 wish left. Just then, her old cat, startled by the sudden change, brushed against her leg, meowing nervously. She looked down lovingly. This cat has been with me through everything. For my final wish, turn him into a handsome man, so we can live out our days together in happiness. Bam! The cat disappeared. In his place stood a tall, dark-haired man. Broad shoulders, piercing eyes, the kind of jawline that could slice diamonds. She gasped, You're beautiful. He stepped closer, pulled her gently into his arms, looked deep into her eyes, and whispered softly, I bet you wish you hadn't had me neutered. An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Frenchman are captured while fighting as mercenaries in a foreign war. The judge sentences each of them to 12 months in solitary confinement. But trying to be fair, he offers each one a year's supply of a luxury item of their choice. He turns to the Englishman first. What would you like? The Englishman straightens up and says, A year's supply of the finest English gin, please. The judge nods and has crates of gin delivered to his cell. Next, he asks the Irishman. Without hesitation, I'll take a year's supply of 12-year-old Irish whiskey. Done. Crates of whiskey are rolled in. Finally, he asks the Frenchman. The Frenchman strokes his chin and says, I shall take a case of the finest French cigarettes. The judge shrugs. Very well, and delivers the cigarettes. The men are sealed into their cells. Meals are slid under the door. No other contact. 12 months later, the judge returns to release them. He opens the Englishman's cell. The man stumbles out, dazed and pale. I'm free, he mutters, then collapses, dead from alcohol poisoning. They open the Irishman's cell. He crawls out slowly, eyes bloodshot, hair wild. I made it, he gasps, then pulls himself upright and stumbles off toward freedom. Finally, they open the Frenchman's cell. He staggers out, thin, ragged, and twitching. He raises his arms and pleads, Please, does anyone have a light? An Englishman, a German, and a Frenchman are caught smuggling alcohol in Saudi Arabia, a serious offense. They're sentenced to 50 lashes each. On the day of the punishment, the sheikh approaches them and says, It's my wife's birthday today. I'll grant each of you 1 wish before you're whipped. The German goes first. After thinking for a moment, he says, Please, tie a pillow to my back. The pillow is secured, but after 20 lashes, the whip cuts through, and the German is carried away, bleeding and in agony. Next, the Frenchman steps up, watching the German with wide eyes. I'd like 2 pillows on my back, he says confidently. The pillows are placed, but after 35 lashes, the whip cuts through again, and the Frenchman is led away, wailing and moaning in pain. Finally, it's the Englishman's turn. Before he can say anything, the sheikh looks at him and says, "You come from a land I admire. I will grant you 2 wishes." The Englishman nods. "Thank you, your most merciful highness. For my first wish, I request 100 lashes." The sheikh is impressed. "You are brave indeed. 100 lashes it is. Would you like pillows?" The Englishman smiles. "No, no pillows. But I'd like you to tie the Frenchman and the German to my back." The Presbyterian Church called an emergency meeting to deal with their squirrel infestation. After much prayer and thoughtful consideration, they concluded that the squirrels were predestined to be there and they shouldn't interfere with God's divine will. At the Baptist church, the squirrels had become particularly fond of the baptistry. The deacons quickly gathered and decided to install a water slide to let the squirrels drown themselves. Unfortunately, the squirrels enjoyed the slide so much and instinctively knew how to swim. So they returned with twice the numbers the next week. The Lutheran Church, not wanting to harm any of God's creatures, decided to humanely trap the squirrels and release them near the Baptist church. 2 weeks later, the squirrels were back when the Baptists took down the water slide. The Episcopalians tried a more unique approach. They set out pans of whiskey around the church, hoping to get the squirrels drunk enough to pass out. What they didn't anticipate was how much damage a group of inebriated squirrels could cause. But the Catholic Church came up with the most creative solution. They baptized all the squirrels and made them official members of the church. Now, they only see them at Christmas and Easter. As for the Jewish synagogue, they took the first squirrel, circumcised him, and they haven't seen a squirrel since. A tourist in Vienna is wandering through a graveyard when, out of nowhere, he hears music. He looks around, but there's no one in sight. Curious, he starts searching for the source. Eventually, he discovers that the music is coming from a grave with a headstone that reads, Ludwig van Beethoven, 1770-1827. To his amazement, the music is Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, being played backward. Confused, the tourist leaves and convinces a friend to return with him. This time, when they arrive, they hear Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, again played backward. Determined to understand what's happening, they consult a music scholar. When they return with the expert, they find that the Fifth Symphony is now playing backward as well. The scholar, studying the music closely, notes that the symphonies are being played in reverse order. First the ninth, then the seventh, then the fifth. Word spreads quickly, and soon a crowd gathers around the grave, all listening intently as the Third Symphony plays backward. Just then, the graveyard's caretaker strolls by. A person in the crowd asks him, "Do you have any idea why the music is playing this way?" The caretaker looks at them, shrugs, and says, "Well, it's obvious, isn't it? He's just decomposing." A man boards a plane and takes his seat. As he's getting settled, he notices an incredibly beautiful woman walking down the aisle, and she's heading straight for him. To his surprise, she takes the seat right next to his. Eager to break the ice, he nervously asks, "Business trip or vacation?" She smiles and replies, "Business? I'm attending the annual Sexual Studies Convention in Chicago." The man's eyes widen. This stunning woman is going to a convention on sexual studies. Trying to stay calm, he asks, "So, what's your role at the convention?" She turns to him, still smiling. "I'm a lecturer. I share my extensive personal experiences and facts about human sexuality." He swallows hard, intrigued but a little flustered. "Like, what kind of facts?" "Well," she begins, "for example, Native American Indians are known to be the most passionate lovers. Jewish men are the best at satisfying women. And surprisingly, the Southern rednecks are the ones who last the longest in bed." She says this last part with a little blush, clearly embarrassed. Then she adds, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking to you about all of this. I don't even know your name." The man smiles, extends his hand, and says, "Tonto Goldstein, at your service. But my friends call me Bubba." Matt and his wife lived in the country. Matt was notorious for being a skinflint and hated spending money. One day, a fair came to the nearby town. "Let's go to the fair, Matt," his wife suggested. "We haven't been out for a long time." Matt mulled it over. He knew the fair would mean spending money, but eventually he relented. "All right," he said, "but I'm not going to spend much. We'll look at things, but we won't buy anything." At the fair, they browsed through all the attractions. His wife found plenty of things she wanted, but Matt refused to let her buy a single item. As they wandered around, they spotted an old airplane in a nearby field with a sign, "Fun flight, $20 for 10 minutes." Matt had never been on an airplane, and he was tempted, but he didn't want to pay for his wife. "I've only got $20, he said to the pilot. "Can my wife come for free?" The pilot, seeing few customers, thought for a moment. "I'll make you a deal. If neither of you screams or shouts during the whole flight, I'll let her ride for free." Matt, always looking for a good bargain, agreed. They climbed into the small plane, and the pilot took off, pulling all sorts of stunts, loops, sharp dives, barrel rolls, trying to make them scream. But Matt and his wife stayed stone silent, not making a sound. Finally, the pilot landed, impressed. "Well done. You both made it through without screaming. Your wife rides for free." Matt smiled and said, "Thanks. That wasn't easy, especially when she fell out." An arrogant young professor boards a plane and finds himself seated next to an old man. Mid-flight, the professor, bored and full of himself, decides to show off. He leans over and says, "Sir, how about a game to pass the time? We'll take turns asking each other questions. If you get my question wrong, you owe me $1. If I get yours wrong, I'll give you $1. The old man shakes his head. "No, thanks. I'm just trying to get some rest." The professor, eager to prove his superiority, ups the stakes. "Okay, if I lose, I'll give you $10. You still only owe me one if you lose." The old man shrugs. "Not interested." The professor, now annoyed and desperate, says, "Fine, $100 if I lose, and you still just pay one." The old man sighs. "All right, but I get to ask the first question." "Deal?" The professor grins, already planning his victory. The old man clears his throat and asks, "What has 5 heads, 40 feet, and lives in a bucket?" The professor blinks. "What?" The old man sits back, closes his eyes. The professor pulls out his tablet. He Googles, searches forums, encyclopedias, everything. He spends an hour trying to crack it. Nothing. Finally defeated, he opens his wallet and hands the old man $100. The old man calmly takes the money and turns back toward the window. "Wait," the professor says. "So, what has 5 heads, 40 feet, and lives in a bucket?" The old man shrugs, hands him $1, and says, "I have no idea." An old man, a schoolboy, a lawyer, a doctor, and a community service worker are on a small plane when suddenly the pilot suffers a stroke and dies. The plane starts plummeting and panic sets in. There are only 4 parachutes and 5 people. The community service worker steps forward. "I help protect vulnerable children and support struggling families. I have to live." She grabs a parachute and jumps. The lawyer says, "I'm one of the sharpest legal minds around. Society needs my brilliance." He grabs the second chute and jumps. The doctor adds, "I save lives every day with my medical training. The world can't afford to lose me." He grabs the third parachute and jumps. That leaves just the old man and the schoolboy. The old man turns to the boy and says, "Son, take the last parachute. You have your whole life ahead of you. I've lived mine." The schoolboy smiles. "It's okay, sir. We can both go. There are still 2 parachutes left." The old man blinks. "Wait, and how?" "What about the lawyer?" The boy shrugged. "Yeah, he grabbed my school bag." There were 3 nurses in a morgue. They entered a room where they had discovered that there was a dead man laying on the bed with a heart on. The first nurse was very forward and said, "Wow, I have never seen that before. I can't let that go to waste." After saying this, the first nurse sat and wrote it. The second nurse did the same. The third nurse explained that she couldn't, as she was on her period. After a bit of convincing, she eventually wrote it. After 3 minutes, the man woke up. The nurses said, "What the hell? You were dead a few minutes ago." The man replied, "Yeah, I was, but I feel great now that I have had 2 jump starts and a blood transfusion." A cowboy rides into a dusty little town and decides to stop at a saloon for a drink. He dismounts, ties his horse to the hitching post, and strolls inside. As soon as he enters, he stomps his boot on the floor, once and twice, 3 times. The chatter dies instantly. Every head turns. The place goes silent. The cowboy clears his throat. "Gentlemen," he says, "my horse is tied up outside. I need to step into the washroom. When I come back, I'll check, and if my horse ain't there, well, let's just say it'll be like that time back in Texas." He says no more, just turns and heads to the washroom. A murmur spreads. The bartender leans over to a customer. "What happened in Texas?" The man shrugs. I don't know. I never heard about Texas. Nobody knows, but the tension builds. Some folks start sweating. Others whisper nervously. No one dares leave or even peek outside. Whatever happened in Texas, they do not want it happening here. Minutes crawl by. The saloon's as quiet as a church in a thunderstorm. Finally, the cowboy reemerges, calm as a preacher on Sunday. He walks past everyone, opens the door, and looks out. A pause. Then he steps back inside, gives a slow nod, and says, "Gentlemen, my horse is still there. You all can relax. Carry on." Relieved sighs ripple through the room. People chuckle nervously and start breathing again. But one man can't hold back. He rushes outside as the cowboy mounts his horse. "Sir," he calls, "please, you had the whole saloon terrified. What exactly happened that time in Texas?" The cowboy adjusts his hat, looks off into the distance, and says, "Well, someone stole my horse, so I had to walk into town and buy another one." Two policemen are on night patrol around 4 a.m. when they spot an older man wobbling down the street, barely able to walk in a straight line. They pull over and stop him. "Sir, where are you coming from at this hour?" one officer asks. The man grins, clearly tipsy. "I just left the best place in the world. My favorite bar, amazing drinks, great music, and the friendliest girls you'll ever meet. Each one nicer than the last." One cop raises an eyebrow. "Sounds like quite the place." "And where exactly are you heading now?" the other asks. "Shouldn't you be in bed by now?" The man chuckles and says, "Bed? Are you kidding? I'm heading to a lecture on the dangers of alcohol, the harm of smoking, and how to behave responsibly in society." The officers glance at each other, skeptical. "At 4 in the morning?" one says. "Really? Who gives a lecture on that at the hour?" The man sighs and mutters, "My wife." A man decides to sneak out of work early and head straight to the pub. One drink leads to another and another. And by the time the bar closes at 2 a.m., he's absolutely plastered. He stumbles home, determined not to wake his wife. So he carefully takes off his shoes and tiptoes up the stairs. Halfway up, he loses his balance and falls backward, hard, straight onto his rear. Unfortunately, he'd stashed 2 empty pint bottles in his back pockets. They shatter on impact, and shards of glass tear up his backside. But he's so drunk he doesn't even feel it. Later, while undressing in the bathroom, he notices blood and turns to check in the mirror. His backside is a mess. With blurry eyes and wobbly hands, he does the best first aid job he can manage, patching himself up with a bunch of Band-Aids, and crawls into bed. The next morning, he wakes up with a pounding head, a burning rear end, and a serious case of regret. He's still lying there groaning when his wife walks in. "Well," she says, arms crossed, "you really tied one on last night." "What?" "No, I just worked late and stopped for a couple of beers." She raises an eyebrow. "A couple of beers? You were completely wasted." He tries to play innocent. "What makes you think I was drunk?" She sighs. "Let's just say my first clue was waking up to find the bathroom mirror covered in Band-Aids." Two billionaire friends meet up for lunch. After some small talk, one of them asks, "So, how's home life?" The other beams. "Couldn't be better. I bought an elephant." The first billionaire blinks. "An elephant? Have you completely lost it?" "Not at all," he says proudly. "It's the best thing I've ever bought. He grazes the lawn, keeps it perfectly trimmed. The kids love him. They ride on his back, slide down his trunk, keeps them off their screens for once. My wife's thrilled. He's so strong, helps her move furniture when I'm not home. And he's incredibly smart, kind, loyal, the best pet I've ever had." The first billionaire strokes his chin, intrigued. "Huh, that actually sounds amazing. How much did you pay for him?" $1 million, says the proud owner. "A bargain, honestly." "Sell him to me for $2 million? "What? No way. He's family." $3 million? "Oh, I don't know." "All right, $5 million. Final offer." The man sighs. "Well, all right, but only because you're my best friend." A few weeks later, they meet again. The buyer storms up, furious. "You absolute scammer! That elephant is a nightmare. He didn't graze the lawn. He ripped up the garden. He smashed the swing set, flattened my hedges, and left piles of dung all over the place. The smell, unbelievable. The kids are traumatized. My wife hasn't stopped screaming since he arrived. And the noise, he trumpets at night like he's summoning demons. I haven't slept in days. The first billionaire nods slowly and says, "Wow, with that attitude, you'll never sell an elephant." A golfer in Ireland hooks his drive into the woods. Searching for his ball, he finds a little leprechaun flat on his back, a big bump on his head, and the golfer's ball lying next to him. Panicked, the golfer grabs his water bottle from the cart and pours it over the leprechaun, reviving him. The leprechaun shakes his head, groaning, "Ah! What happened?" "I'm afraid I hit you with my golf ball," the golfer says. "Oh, I see," the leprechaun says, sitting up. "Well, you got old Patty here, fair and square. You get 3 wishes. What do you want?" The golfer, relieved the leprechaun is okay, replies, "Thank God you're all right. I don't want anything. I'm just happy you're fine. And I really apologize for hitting you." He then walks off, leaving the leprechaun thinking. The leprechaun watches him go and says to himself, "Wow, what a nice guy. I've got to do something for him." So he grants him 3 things: a great golf game, all the money he'll ever need, and a fantastic love life. A year later, the golfer returns, and once again, his drive lands in the woods. He finds the leprechaun waiting for him. "'Twas me that made you hit the ball here," the leprechaun says, smiling. "I just want to know, how's your golf game?" "It's fantastic," the golfer responds. "I'm an internationally famous golfer now." "That's great," the leprechaun says. "And how's your money situation?" The golfer grins. "Wonderful. When I need cash, I just reach into my pocket, and there's always a $100 bill waiting for me." "I did that for ye too," the leprechaun says proudly. "And tell me, how's your love life?" The golfer blushes, looking away in embarrassment. "It's okay," he mutters. "Oh, come on," the leprechaun presses. "I did all this for ye. How many times a week do you do the deed?" The golfer, now bright red, whispers, "Once, sometimes twice a week." The leprechaun stares at him in disbelief. "Only once or twice a week? What?" The golfer sheepishly replies, "Well, it's not bad for a Catholic priest in a small parish." Ed and Carolyn met on a singles cruise, and Ed instantly fell head over heels for her. When they discovered they lived just a few miles apart, Ed was ecstatic. He immediately started asking her out after they got home. Over the next couple of weeks, he took Carolyn to dance clubs, restaurants, concerts, movies, and museums. Ed quickly became convinced that Carolyn was his soulmate. Every date seemed better than the last. On the 1-month anniversary of their first dinner on the cruise, Ed took Carolyn to a fine restaurant. While enjoying cocktails and waiting for their salads, Ed said, "I guess you can tell I'm very much in love with you. But before we take this relationship to the next level, I think we need to have a serious conversation. You see, I'm a total golf nut. I play golf, I read about golf, I watch golf on TV, and I eat, sleep, and breathe golf. If that's going to be a problem for us, you need to tell me now." Carolyn took a deep breath and said, "Ed, I love you as you are, and I love golf too. But since we're being completely honest, I need to tell you something. For the last 5 years, I've been a hooker." Ed paused, then smiled and said, "That's all right. I bet it's because you're not keeping your wrists straight when you hit the ball." After 3 months of disappointing sales, Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken was desperate. He called the Pope and asked for a favor. "What can I do for you?" the Pope asked. The Colonel replied, "Holy Father, I need you to change the words of the daily prayer from 'Give us this day our daily bread' to 'Give us this day our daily chicken.' If you do that, I'll donate $10 million to the Vatican." The Pope, taken aback, responded, "I'm very sorry, Colonel, but that is the Lord's Prayer. I can't just change it." Disappointed, the Colonel hung up. A month later, with sales still low, the Colonel called again. "Your Excellency, I really need your help. I'll donate $50 million to the Vatican if you change the words from 'Give us this day our daily bread' to 'Give us this day our daily chicken.'" The Pope thought for a moment, then said, "It's very tempting, Colonel. That money could do a lot of good for our charities. But again, I cannot change the Lord's Prayer." The colonel hung up again, frustrated but not ready to give up. After 2 more months of poor sales, the colonel, now desperate, made his final offer. Your Excellency, this is my last offer. If you change the prayer from, "Give us this day our daily bread," to, "Give us this day our daily chicken," I will donate $100 million to the Vatican. The Pope was silent for a moment before responding. Let me think it over. The next day, the Pope called a meeting of his bishops. I have good news and bad news, the Pope said. The good news is that KFC is going to donate $100 million to the Vatican. The bishops cheered, thrilled at the news. But what's the bad news? One of them asked. The Pope sighed and said, the bad news is we lost the Wonder Bread account.